Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Good morning. A Christian couple are threatening to take their 6-year-old son's school to a tribunal because another pupil sometimes comes to class as a boy and other times as a girl wearing a dress. Nigel and Sally Rowe have withdrawn their son from his Church of England primary, saying the authorities had acted without due regard to the best interests of pupils, had failed to consult other parents and had not respected their rights to bring up children with biblical values. 2 years previously, they'd taken his 8-year-old brother out of class when a pupil came out as transgender. Let's talk now to Nigel and Sally Rowe, and also with us Jane Fay, a campaigner for LGBT rights who transitioned in her 50s. And just to say, we're not naming the primary school deliberately to protect the various children involved. Nigel and Sally Rowe, thank you very much for talking to us. Thanks for coming on the programme. What were your concerns?
Yeah.
What? Sorry, I've lost the earpiece. Sorry.
I've lost as well.
What were your concerns?
Our concerns were our child came home from school one day saying, "Daddy, I'm confused." I said, "There's a boy in his class which is sometimes coming as a boy and sometimes coming as a girl," and we were concerned about that because it's very confusing. And how do children deal with that? And let's remember that these are primary school children. This is 6 years of age, and we're worried what effect that can have on the other children, and how do they have to deal with that. That was what our concern was.
And what were you worried about? What were you afraid of in terms of the effect on your son or the other children in the class?
Well, I think it was the advice that was given to the school we feel was insufficient, and that, well, firstly, that the child that had gender confusion shouldn't be put in a public domain like a school. To begin with, they need to be given proper care and to have the proper assessments and advice from professionals before it just goes in. And for the other children, it's imposing that the boy that they once were friends with a boy's name, they've now got to start treating them and calling them by a girl's name and changing the pronoun from he to she and things like that. And we feel that is quite difficult for a 6-year-old. They're confused, and what if they get it wrong? Will there be punishment? This is our concern. Right.
Yeah. I mean, presumably you don't know if the 6-year-old who was coming one day dressed as a boy and one day dressed as a girl had the professional assessments. And in terms of the effect on your children and the others in the class, kids at that age are really adaptable, aren't they?
They are, but they're also very vulnerable.
And I think... Sorry to interrupt. Vulnerable to what?
We're vulnerable to all sorts of things that go on in a classroom, and we need to be protecting them and safeguarding them. Well, with this, they know that this child is a boy, but they are being forced to pretend that they are not a boy, that they're a girl, and that's quite hard for a child to get their head around. I know that there are other parents that were concerned that their child came back sort of unhappy. It's like, oh, my friend's different now and confused. And I think in this forum of just, they're just 6-year-olds.
Sure, no, I understand.
And we feel like it's a big thing. It's got a lot more implications for the child in question and all the children in terms of bullying, changing room issues, what happens when puberty kicks in, and that this needs to be discussed properly, and policies need to be put in place to protect all children so that they are in a safe environment.
I'm still confused about what it is you were wanting to protect your son and the others in his class from.
Well, it could be emotional stress. It could be things like that. It could confusion. That's what we're protecting the children from. Is a situation where they're in confusion, they don't understand, and also, as Sally mentioned, that a child can get chastised for addressing the child in the wrong way. But you see, this is very complex, isn't it?
Did that happen? Did anybody get chastised for addressing this a fellow pupil in the wrong way?
Not that we're aware of.
Not aware of, no.
Don't know.
No.
And who was...
But the letter that we received was very staunch, as like, if you don't, it's transphobic behaviour. And I think that's really harsh.
Yeah, yeah.
And also now you're opening the door as well for your 6-year-olds, you know, to come dressed as different things even, you know. It's like, where do you draw the line? Where are the boundaries? We need to really think carefully about this, because it does have long-term effects, and we don't know that. Are we, you know, it's kind of like an experiment. Let's see how it goes, when really it needs to be done in a private domain, not in the public domain of a school. And we're talking about 6-year-olds here. We're not talking about adults. Adults can make their own decision. They're mature enough, and they're to make a decision about this. But these children, are they emotionally able to make a decision this great? And it just to be out there.
I think it's really important to understand that, you know, all the children are valued and loved and cared for, and we really do care. You know, it's very difficult for the parents of the other children who are suffering from, you know, gender dysphoria, that sort of thing. So it needs to, as Sally said, it needs to be an environment where they can be cared for and understood. It's not a case of attacking or anything like that at all.
It doesn't sound like you're being very understanding.
Oh, no.
No, we are. We really love the families that are involved. We're good friends. There's
no animosity.
But then on the other hand, if we're in a democratic society where all views and beliefs and thoughts are listened to, but we feel like we can't speak out. Now, I know there's a lot of families that are in the same situation as us, where they wouldn't feel comfortable with their child being in this situation, and it's very. And why can't they speak out? Because they're just labelled transphobic or hateful, and that is far from the case. We have so much love for these and compassion, and we know that parents want to do the very best for their children. They want them to be happy.
Have you ever...
You know, and our children weren't happy.
Yeah. Have you met a trans child, or a child that one day comes to school dressed as a boy and then perhaps the next as a girl? Have you talked to such a child?
Yes, yeah. I mean, we go in regularly into school. We know the family. We know these children. You know,
we're very much part of the school.
There's two children here. The one that's now 8 that changed to be a girl, and with a girl's name is now 8. We know the family. We know the children. Yeah. That personally, we have love for them, and we treat them with respect and care and love. But we just feel that we need to be an open debate about this. We need to really think about what is going on in schools and how we impose these things on very, very young children. Okay, is this the right environment?
And there needs to go through a consultation process as well.
Yeah,
I think
we weren't consulted.
I think it's wrong that the school suddenly just comes in and then says, this is how it is today. I think the parents of the school need to be consulted. And various other, the LEA and the Church of England as well. They need to be consulted first. There needs to be dialogue before just suddenly expecting everybody just to accept this situation. It's about consultation.
Yeah. Let me bring in Jane Fay, who's an LBGT activist, campaigner, and transitioned in her 50s. Hello, Jane. Do talk to Sally and Nigel Rowe.
Yes, well, just straight across through the magic of television. Yes. Sorry, Nigel. Sally? Yes.
Sally, yeah.
Sally, yeah. What gender are your children?
They're both boys.
How do you know that? Isn't that a bit of an adult decision, which you, I think, just said?
Because they have the genitals to show they were born as boys.
It's all about genitals, is it?
No, it's not. No,
well, then how do you know if you've...
Well, you can see that. Well, if you can even look, even from a scientific point of view, you can see the difference between male and females. Their traits between male and females is within our DNA.
So for
a boy, clearly, when you go to any hospital and someone is born, they'll lift up and say it's a boy or it's a girl. And
so it's what you are assigned at birth. For a trans child, they can't possibly know until they're 18, but your children magically know at age 6. Is that what it is?
No, you're kind of putting a totally...
Well, you've just said that you don't know. It's an adult decision about gender.
No,
So
it's not our decision. It's physical. It's physical.
Okay.
You can see it.
But if a child is confused, that's a mental.
Right. Can I
confusion,
just add
isn't
that I had this with Victoria earlier. There does seem to be a bit of confusion because there are 2 children involved, aren't there?
That's right.
One of them
Yes.
is 8. The school handled this very well. That child is transitioning and you get on with them, although I notice you disrespect them by calling them he. And the other child has just recently started, yes? And you're worried about bullying.
Well, the
Are you
other
worried,
child,
you said you're worried about bullying?
there could be cases of bullying. Yeah.
So you're
I mean,
worried your
other
children might bully this child?
No, our children,
not at
because
all.
we've taught
So
our
who
children
might?
to respect and love others, regardless of who or what they are. That is very much part of our Christian values. You love your neighbour as yourself.
Just my own experience, both with my own family and with with trans children, is that the children bullied tend to be those children. And
Yeah,
they
it's
tend to
very
be
sad.
bullied because parents take the sort of view that you take. Very much, when parents tell their child not to accept another child, their children go out and bully.
Well, that's wrong, and
far
that's
from the
very
truth. And
sad.
we've got a clear example of that with our child. He had his 6th birthday party, and he said he wanted to include all the class, and he was even made a thing on make sure you invite this particular child who sometimes dresses as a girl and sometimes dresses as a boy. He shows love and compassion and care to every child in his class, and that's what we've brought him up to be, and he's amazing.
What I do know, having spoken to the parents of the 8-year-old this morning, which is not the child that you're talking about, that child went to bed last night scared. They said they didn't feel safe because of what you're doing, because you can't get a voice on national TV. This is not national... Oh, this is national
But
TV,
should they be aware of this? This is
we don't want the
a
children-
dialogue that we don't even want the
This is
children
a-
involved in this. This is an
You
adult
don't
discussion.
want this dialogue that the child can hear, and do you
No.
expect the child not to be
No, not
watching
at all.
the news, not to be watching Victoria, not to be watching
No.
Sky?
Well, our children certainly are.
No, they aren't.
We don't want to.
We haven't brought our children into this.
This is not about the. This is not about. We care for the family so much. We truly love them, and we care for the child. You see, it's not about that. We were concerned of the fact that there was no consultation and be able to work through all this. We have no
What would have been-
animosity
if-
whatsoever towards.
Can I ask, sorry to interrupt, Mr. and Mrs. Ray, if there had been a consultation, what would have been a good outcome for you if there had been a consultation?
Well, that's very hard to speculate. But for me personally, I would have liked to have seen it work through. You know, with people who are experts in that field and understanding, gender. Gender dysphoria.
Yeah, and that may well have happened privately.
Very likely to have happened. Schools are supposed to do that.
It wasn't though.
How do you know that?
Sorry,
They
I'm just...
were going to put it in place, but it's basically when it just came out. It was just announced, and then they were like, oh, we will then go down that road of.
And when you say worked through with experts in gender dysphoria, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, we have been given a scientific report about this, about the whole gender dysphoria from Christian Concern to try and understand it, and these are things which are apparently mental disorders, and basically within the report, I think when I read that the fact that they said within such young children, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, it's not something that should be encouraged and supported because they are just far too young. And I think I believe there's a statistic, isn't well, about
98% of children who have this confusion about what gender they are. 90% of them, once they go through the natural form of puberty, they revert back. Oh yes, I am a boy. I am a girl.
Okay. It's not a mental disorder. It's not a mental disorder. I mean, if you talk to, for example, the Tavistock Clinic, which is an NHS clinic for under 18s in this country, for children, young teenagers, young adults who have gender identity disorder, they will tell you it's not a mental disorder.
Well,
and they take great... It's not a matter of opinion.
It's not a mental disorder.
It's not a matter of opinion. They are doctors, NHS doctors.
But also the report we wrote, we'd been reading, you see, I guess it comes where the report comes from. I mean, the professor of this particular article we read stated the opposite. So I guess it's depending on who you listen to.
Let me read a couple of comments before we wrap our conversation up. This is from Charles. He's emailed to say, I know it's really difficult to understand if you aren't trans. But when you are, and when your internal identity is at odds with what the world sees and tells you, it's incredibly painful. Just being called a female name or a female pronoun for me as a child was painful. Yes, from as young as 6. Being told by your parents, school and society that you're not wrong just for being trans. Learning the lessons young is life-saving for so many and has no adverse effect on anyone else.
Okay.
Kim says, I really have problems trying to understand what the couple is saying. I certainly don't agree with what they've done, but they seem to be far less understanding and accepting than any child. Very un-Christian-like. And Nicola on Twitter says, it makes me cross. Parents are responsible for educating children too, and these are transferring their prejudice through the generations. It's disgraceful. Carl on Twitter, totally support the couple in withdrawing their child from the school. What happens now in terms of your relationship with the school and whether you want certainly your younger son to go back there?
Well, since we sort of challenged the school on this, and obviously the media hype and everything, and certainly the headline, which was saying about us suing the school, which is not, it's going to an educational tribunal. The hatred and the comments coming from people has been unbelievable. It's been so hurtful for us because we've been people that have been very much involved in the school. We do school assemblies and we really do care and love everyone there, the parents, the staff, all the children, and that for me has been incredibly hurtful because it's not something we would ever do, treat others like that. It's a case we wanted dialogue. And we wanted the school to be able to communicate that more clearly. But the letter we received, we felt was just very staunch.
We feel there needs to be more open dialogue. You know, this is on a national, it isn't just about us and the school and our boys. It's just, this is a big thing that is going into school, this gender ideology, and it needs discussion. And there are a lot of people who feel the same way as us but are scared to speak, and then they say, oh, we're hateful, we're transphobic, but that is not the case at all. We just want to, is this a child protection thing? This is protecting every child and everyone being able to have a voice and a dialogue about this before it's just pushed through.
That's right.
I'm going to pause it there, but thank you so much for your time and for giving us so much time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Nigel and Sally Rowe. Jane Fay, LGBT activist. Final thought from you? A dialogue? Is there any dialogue to be had? What do you think?
Well, I'd love to have a dialogue. I'll just say in church yesterday, the gospel was talking about the supreme commandment being loving your neighbour as yourself. What I'm seeing here, if they didn't want this other child to feel unsafe, all they had to do was say no comment. What I'm seeing is an extremist Christian set, maybe not them, but Christian Concern, as extremist in its own way as people like ISIS. This has got to stop.
Thank you. Jane Fay.
Now, a Christian family have pulled both their children out of school and are threatening legal action in a row over transgender dressing. The 2 boys will now be homeschooled after the family took issue with the primary school allowing other boys to wear dresses. Joining us now to discuss it in more detail are the writer, I should say, an LGBT campaigner, Jane Fay, and Caroline Farrow, blogger for the Conservative Woman website. Hello to you both.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for joining us. Jane, to you first of all. I'm guessing you're not very impressed with this couple.
Actually, I spoke to the couple this morning. I feel very, very sorry for them. And I feel much crosser, much more angry at the organisation which has sort of pushed them into this, which is Christian Concern. I feel sorry for most of the people involved in this because the history is that the school had a trans child which was transitioning well, and this couple got on well with them. There's a second transgender child arrived this term and they've sort of thrown a fit, and they've been pushed, I think, or something by Christian Concern to start going public. But what they were saying is they don't want this to make a big fuss and they don't want it to go away. And I'm thinking, you're now on national news. What did you think was going to happen? So I feel very sorry for all of them.
Caroline.
Yes, I would agree with that, but I would also say that I support their right to take their child out of school. I'm not sure that suing the school is the constructive thing to do when you remember that being transgender is a protected characteristic under the law. So, and I think there's more to it simply than I object to boys wearing dresses. However, I think where they have a point is that when you go down this route in schools and with young children, you're saying to young children, you're asking them in effect to lie, to say that boys and girls are the same, that biological sex doesn't matter, and that it's very, you know, that if you feel that you're a certain sex, then you can just change that. Sex is all about a feeling. That's not a scientific reality or a fact, and I think it's very, very harmful to force children into a position where they're having to lie, or where they've got, you know, a friend who was one sex and suddenly John is now Tessa, or you know, Jill is now Bob. That's quite, I think, abusive to children, and I think you're setting children down a path whereby they're being taught something quite harmful about changing sex, and it's potentially setting them down a path where they become a bit frightened of puberty, and then potentially they go on puberty blockers, and then maybe synthetic hormones, maybe down the surgery route, and you're actually kind of setting them down on this path at a very young age. I think most 6-year-olds don't really understand what it means to be male and female.
That is not... And the name thing, of course, what was Pope Francis before he became Pope Francis?
Jorge Bergoglio.
I was so confused by that, and I was so upset. No, that's a little bit beneath me, but, you know, people change their names all the time, and some of this stuff about name changing, I mean, years and years back, I had a little bit of military experience, and one learned very quickly that you responded to certain people with "sir," and that's not how you normally address people. In other words, I think far too much is made of a pronoun thing. To be clear, in primary school, not a lot is being done. All that is happening is that the schools and the pupils are being asked to respect people's gender presentation. It's not saying that the school has to buy into this child is trans, or this child is that or is the other. It's saying, for the sake of the child, buy into it for now, whilst the specialists and the experts get on. And that has been Ofsted advice for about 10 years. Not only has it been Ofsted advice, but it actually is something that we need, not just for trans people, but for women particularly, because otherwise what you get are when girls get to 10 or 11, computing, that's not a girl's topic. IT, that's not a girl's topic, da-da-da-da-da. So you have to go down a very gendered pathway. What Ofsted have said about all genders is let people express their gender and don't let people bully them.
I quite agree with you about bullying, and I also agree with you about sort of gender stereotypes. And I think some of the thinking behind some of this ideology sort of says, well, if a boy likes to wear a dress, then he must be a girl, or he must be, you know, going down that pathway. And I've seen parents question their children's gender identity because it seems to be very much in vogue at the moment. You know, somebody likes to do something a little bit different outside of a very tight sort of stereotype that, you know, a cliche that girls like pink, boys like blue. Okay, they might well be the other sex. And we're also seeing this, I think, as well, particularly with teen girls who feel that they may be lesbians, are being encouraged as a whole. Seems to be a whole movement on YouTube. You know, there's an explosion of teen girls presenting, saying, oh, actually, I think I'm transgender. I think I'm really a boy. And when in schools you are saying to children, actually, this person who you knew as a boy is now a girl, is sending them a very confusing message. It's saying, okay, boys can become girls. Now, this is I believe this is a really harmful ideology.
Okay.
An ideology. So, I mean, you don't see it as something that actually exists, but it's not possibly something which has roots within people. I'm not quite sure what you're getting at. I mean, well, you use the word ideology. In other words, it's like there's people out there going into schools and saying, do you want to be trans? Do you want to change your gender? And so on.
I think the idea of being trans is being introduced to children, and I think that that's actually quite a harmful development. I think there are people, I think there are individuals, I think individuals like yourself, who in life they decide that actually the way I can live, the way I need to live, the way I need to express myself is like this. And I think tolerance, nobody has any problem with that. But actually, you're imposing on a wider society this idea that actually boys can be girls, people can change their sex, and once someone changes their sex, they absolutely are that new sex, you know, and identical to women. And, you know, we can say, you and I, you know, I'm biologically a woman, and you know, I'm not being offensive here, I'm biologically a woman, you are socially and culturally a woman, but you weren't born a woman. But when people, what's happening at the moment is that when people are saying, okay, you know, people can change sex, we're seeing the erasure of female spaces, and that is something that is really bothering me as a woman and as a mother of 5 children.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you sort of went off at a certain tack there. I very much, well, the female spaces thing, clearly you're not accepting that a trans person is a particular gender. The thing which I would agree with you on wholeheartedly is that everything in medicine, in life, people take over the top and people get it wrong. And if there's any suggestion of somebody being pushed into transness, of course I would agree that that is wrong. Although I'm sort of slightly confused on this because you almost seem to be saying that, I'm not sure if you're talking for the Catholic Church, that the Catholic Church is happier with lesbians than with trans women.
I'm talking on behalf of myself.
This is a fascinating discussion, ladies, if I might say
I'm sorry,
so.
am I allowed to say lesbian?
No. I mean, I'm talking as myself. I'm talking as a blog of the Conservative Woman, and I'm talking as a Catholic journalist. And my personal view is of toleration. Okay, and I have no problem with somebody like yourself who has gone through the whole grueling process to become a woman. I've got no problem with you, you know, using the appropriate loo that you think is right for you. Where I have got a problem is with so-called sort of gender fluidity, where people are saying, well, I'm non-gender binary, and today I'm going to identify as this, tomorrow I'm going to identify as that, accessing female spaces.
How do you feel about that, Jen?
But mostly they don't. That is a sort of...
No, but how do you feel about the people that do?
I'm not sure I've met people who do that. People... I can't talk for people who are gender fluid. What I can say is that this whole concept of, I wake up this morning and I'm going to be so-and-so, seems to be a myth that comes from a particular set of people.
Ladies, fascinating discussion. Sadly, we are out of time, but please do come back and we'll talk about it in more detail on another occasion.